Hello, today's date, it is December 20th, 2020, 2:30 a.m. in the morning. Did I say my name is Jim Howard and I'm in Fort Worth, Texas? I can't remember if I said that. I'm using, by the way, AC/DC Video Studios video editing program, which includes desktop recording. And I'm using this microphone here, and I'm using the Logitech Brio USB webcam. I want to go to using my Panasonic digital camera. I don't have the device that I need. I purchased another one, and well, I still don't have the correct cable, I don't think. But anyway, I'm not sure why, but I decided to. I worked hospital security for about 30 years. First hospital I worked at, we had two security officers shot about a year or two apart, both in the Wabash parking lot and both at 9:15 p.m. Then I've talked about that, I think, at length. When the first security officer was shot, I informed the hospital administrator that they needed to put a gate up between a church parking lot and our doctor's parking lot, and that they needed to get bulletproof vests for the security officers. They did absolutely nothing. The second security officer who was shot, and he was killed in that parking lot at 9:15 p.m., John Galegas. A guy came from the church parking lot through where there was no gate into our doctor's parking lot, and went over to a car and started trying to steal something out of the car. There was a bunch of stuff in the car. And they both saw each other at the same time. John Galegas saw the individual, and the individual saw him. They both threw at the same time. They both shot at the same time. John Galegas was hit in the chest, where if he'd had a bulletproof vest on, he might have had a bruise. But he was hit in the chest, went down, and he was dead. But John fired at the same time, hit this suspect, and the suspect ran and jumped over a very high fence that had razor ribbon along the entire perimeter of the fence, and he went over that fence over onto the next street, and then realized that he was going to collapse, so he took and threw his gun underneath a vehicle. And anyway, John was dead when he hit the ground. So the next morning, when the hospital administrator showed up, remember, I had told him, the hospital administrator, before, you need to put a gate here and get bulletproof vest, or something like this is going to happen again. It may not be a security officer that's shot. It may be a doctor, a visitor, a patient. Could be anybody. And the hospital administrator laughed and said, maybe I'll get you a horse, and went in. I sent every member of the medical staff, every doctor, as they pulled in, because the doctor's parking lot was right there, and for that day I was assigned for that parking lot. 3 days a week I was inside the hospital, 2 days a week I was in the parking lot. And I sent every doctor, and every one of them went to the administrative offices and an hour or two, an hour and a half or something, the assistant administrator of the hospital came out. I could see him walking, from the Wabash entrance across Wabash Street, and he was acting like he was, oh, Jim, I guess I don't need to do what, I guess I don't need to, but by the way, we're going to put a gate up here between the doctor's parking lot and the church parking lot, and we're going to get bulletproof vests for you guys. And then he went back inside. So it took him a little while to probably come up with the money. The nuns didn't like to turn loose of any money unless it was going to the Pope or to their diocese or to their mother house or whatever. But so probably the doctors came up with it, because some of the doctors, as I was sending them in that day, how much do bulletproof vests cost? I said, I don't know. Doctor said, I'll buy it. I'll buy them or what. So maybe the nuns probably didn't have to pay for it. But I stuck around. It took them a little while. I stuck around. The only time, that was a bad neighborhood. I mean, it was the worst neighborhood in Kansas City, Missouri. And I knew because I grew up in that neighborhood. Anyway, we never, their security never did anything other than, we never jump-started cars, we didn't do snow removal, we just, and it was a bad neighborhood. The hospital was losing patients. Nobody wanted to go to that hospital unless all the other hospitals were filled up, which happens sometimes, and somebody sometimes needed an operation. And back then, I don't think the insurance was the same way that it is now, where you have the insurance company says, this is the only hospital you can go to, or these are the only 2 or 3 hospitals that you can go to. And I think things might have been a little bit different, because somebody would show up and be like, I'm so glad to see, see a security, I'm so glad to see you, here and everything. I didn't want to come here, but, I have to have an operation, and the other operating rooms were, they didn't have any beds in the hospital or whatever, And the same, I would see, staff doctors who I would, say, Dr. Piper, I haven't seen you in a while. Well, my patients don't want to come here, but, So, anyway, I stuck around. Well, like, I was saying, we didn't do anything else. And other than driving the Cushman scooter around the other side of the hospital and going across and getting gas for the Cushman scooter, I never left the hospital. Where at other hospitals, they had me. Later, I worked at other hospitals, and they'd have me driving downtown to take papers to the law offices, or driving out to expensive parts of Kansas City metro area to deliver some type of thing to somebody's big house that was on the board of directors of the hospital, or something like that, and they wanted them to get this thing right away, stuff like that. But at St. Joe, never left the hospital property, except I was sent then to go to Law Enforcement Equipment Company and pick up the vest, and the gate was put up between the church parking lot and the doctor's parking lot. But I knew my name had been circled, so I then went to work at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, which brings us to this. I went to work over at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, which was 31st Street, except it was St. Joe Hospital was 25 blocks from Main Street, and I went to work at Trinity, which was 1 block on the other side of Main Street. So it was the same distance, but because of there was a lot of businesses and things around Trinity Lutheran Hospital, stuff like that, so the neighborhood was a little bit better, quite a bit better, a lot better. But I went to work there. Started on the day shift, and then eventually an opening became available for a supervisor on the second shift. I didn't want to be a supervisor. I just wanted to work I had a family. I just wanted to work the day shift. And the director of security asked me. I said, no, I want to stay on the day shift. And then he sent a female supervisor. And she came down, oh, Jim, Mr. Ross would like to have you working that. No, I have no desire. I just want to stay on this day shift and work here. Then sent the lieutenant, who didn't want me to be he was terrified of anybody ever maybe being a competition to him or something, or rather he was a lieutenant, supposedly over all 3 shifts, but he was just, Oh, and he came, oh, Jim, man, and they, no, I just want to work the day shift. And of course, they even lied about some stuff. I said, well, so-and-so on the midnight shift, he started a couple weeks before I did. He should, I didn't know that they had problems with him with drinking. And, but they said, no, he didn't want it. And he'd been asked. Oh, yeah. I said, did you ask him? He didn't want it. I found out he did want it. Because then he was pissed at me for a long time. Anyway, after I went up and took the second shift position, and the director of security was a pretty smart guy. He had some problems, but he was a smart guy. And so Jim, could you do me a favor? Could you just go over on the second shift as supervisor? I've got a problem with 2 of the security officers there, and I'd like for you to take care of it for me. Oh, man, he knew how to, a challenge. Oh, something I could, So I said, he said for a little while. I went over and I was there, supervisor for several years, 2 or 3 years or something on that shift. And then finally I kept telling the director of security, I don't want to be a supervisor. I want to work the day shift. I got kids, I got little kids, and everything. So finally I went to the day shift. When I went over to the day shift from the second shift, right away I saw this guy. I saw him a few times. Over a few days I saw this black man in a Roman, Roman collar, clerical, like a minister or a priest or whatever. Saw him different places, and I asked the guys who then had been working, because I'd been gone for years from the first shift, what's with the minister? Oh yeah, he's here for something, and then I'd see him another, a few days later, I'd see him someplace, and then I'd say, what, have you guys talked to him? Oh, no. So then when I ran into him, Reverend, what are you doing here? I'm ministering to the, and I said, what church do you, anyway, a trespasser. And I gave him a trespass warning. He came back. I gave him another trespass warning. He came back, and I told him, you're going to go to jail if you come back again. And I actually saw him again after quite a while. I saw him in the cafeteria in line, and he got up. By the time I saw him, he got up to the cashier, so I went over, and I said, I told you. And of course he was black, and then the cashier was a young black, lady. And I walk up to him, and I said, I told you, not to come back or be arrested. And I said, I'm not going to arrest you this time. You're not going to get arrested this time, but do not come back. I mean it. You come back, you're going to jail. If I see you here again, you are going to jail. And I said to the cashier, wrap up his plate, and he can take it and eat it someplace off of hospital property. And she looked like shocked, And then he tried to stab me like with a plastic fork, So he didn't come back after that anymore. So then, and maybe at the same time this stuff was going on, at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, I this would have been about 1975, I believe. I saw this black guy who worked in surgery. He would be transporting patients, and so he usually used, not a visitor's elevator, but one of the other elevators. But I would check those elevators and check the entire hospital and that type of stuff. And he'd be, or sometimes he'd just be coming back. He had taken a patient to surgery and was going someplace else. But I would see him. So I saw him, and don't know if we have a picture of him. Let me see if I can find one. No, anyway, that's, this guy, when I would see him, in my entire life, I've never seen anybody so filled with hate and rage. And so I hadn't had any contact with this guy. So I asked the other security officers, the guy who's transportation or orderly in surgery that moves patients and everything? Yeah. I said, have we had security had some type of a problem with the guy? No. I said, have we put a ticket on his vehicle or anything at all? No. They said, why? And I said, well, when I see him, he looks at me like he wants to kill me, that he would welcome the opportunity to kill me. I said, there's got to be, So at about that time, it'd be more, I guess, like half a block away from the hospital property. And you could see from the way the parking lot was, when you could look down and you could see 31st and Main Street. And there was might have been something on the corner, but right next to it, I think, was an adult bookstore. And actually then across the street, I think there was 2 bars on the corner. One was, I guess, a regular bar, and the other had entertainment, and they were kind of well known. They had men dressed up as women, and I'm not sure what they did, dancing or I don't know. But there was couples came from all over to go there for the entertainment. And but anyway, at the adult bookstore, somebody went in noon and robbed the place and killed both the employees. And I couldn't quite throw a rock from our parking lot to that place, but it was close. And then, and maybe before that, there were several other robberies. And whoever was doing the robberies didn't leave anybody alive when he robbed the place. Thank God there wasn't, I guess, thank God he didn't rob a movie theater or something and kill all the but he didn't leave anybody alive. And this was in Kansas City, Missouri, of course. Businesses then, this is before satellite communications and before CNN or whatever, so I'm not sure how far wide the news of these things went, because there wasn't any CNN or, might have been mentioned in some news, but in Kansas City, businesses locked their doors. Now, not all of them. Kind of, I guess it depended on, I guess especially if you were in a bad neighborhood. And if you wanted to get a haircut, the door would be locked. You'd have to knock. If you wanted to go in the jewelry store, you had to knock. And I kind of doubt this. I don't think they would. A lot of people would open the door for this guy. He was black. He was tall. He was skinny. I wish I could find a picture. I did not long ago. I did a search and pulled up the front page of Kansas City Star. Maybe you have to do a search for that. Times, I think. Ah, here we go. There you go. See if I click view full page. That will work. No, it just makes it smaller. Oops, that didn't go smaller here. Well, maybe here we go. Anyway, businesses were terrified, and like I said, we had the armed robbery across the street. But it was a kind of a bad neighborhood. But it was interesting that businesses were locking their doors, and you couldn't get in unless you were, unless they let you in. So at about 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m., he was in Independence, which is a city right up against, where the Truman Library is, and where Harry Truman's home was. Actually, it was his mother-in-law's home. Him and his wife and everything lived there. But Vincent X. Lee went into a 7-Eleven. There was a female employee there, and robbed the place. And there was I guess a customer in there, male, and he put them both in the back room, and then he shot them, killed both of them, and then he left. And it must have been a strip mall or whatever. I guess there was almost nobody. 2:30 in the afternoon, but I guess there was hardly anybody there. But somebody who was there, I think an employee of another place, saw a pink over, I think it was black, Cadillac take off at a high rate of speed that was parked in front of the back den, parked in front of the 7-Eleven, and it left at a high rate of speed. And this person went over to check the place, and then nobody was there. And then she went to the back and found the two bodies. This case, by the way, in the police academy is one of the ones that in the Kansas City, Missouri Police Academy. Well, it's not actually Kansas City, but it's for other departments also. Regional, police academy. It's one of the cases that maybe they don't anymore, but for years this is one of the cases that they talked about for a number of reasons. But it was my day off. I worked at security at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, the day shift. And on the news, you know. In fact, I'm not sure it might have been popping up, seemed like it was popping up on television between newscasts, but I'm not, but anyway, on the news was that a Cadillac, and they gave a description of it, you know, the police were looking for a person for these murders. And I told Darlene, I said, I've seen a Cadillac something like that, not that color, but a Cadillac something like that. And when I didn't know that it belonged to, I didn't tie it up with this guy who was looking at me like he wanted to kill me. I said, when I go back to work tomorrow, I'm going to check the vehicle, look in it. I didn't tell her the details. I said I was going to check it, which would have been looking at it, seeing who it belonged to, looking and see if I see any shell casings on, whatever, just, that type of thing. So I'm going to check that tomorrow when I get there. Anyway, that day, he worked at Trinity Lutheran Hospital. He was the guy that, looked like he wanted to kill me. And when he left the hospital, the police, he worked at the hospital, and when he left Trinity Lutheran Hospital, they somehow saw the police knew. I guess they were looking, everybody was looking. And when he left that day, they followed him till he got downtown Kansas City, and then they stopped him, and then they arrested him. And there was a .22 caliber gun in the car. No, I couldn't find the gun, I believe. There was .22 caliber. These people were killed with a .22 caliber. There were shells and the ammunition in the car, and some other stuff. And there were other things that tied him up. My story, and I don't see that here, was that when the police were looking for this car, it was on the news that they were looking for a Cadillac, and that he had the car painted. And somebody was at the story that we heard in the police academy was that there was a guy, a black male, who was in that parking lot and went into the 7-Eleven store. Now, I'm not sure. I think he must have made a purchase. She must have, and he made a purchase and he left. And he was seen leaving by somebody. But the police located him. I'm not sure. I don't remember now how. But, I mean, they showed up. This guy was a law-abiding, black citizen. Had a wife, had kids, had a job, and everything else. And the police department showed up at his place, guns drawn and the whole thing, and took him for questioning, and giving him the 3rd degree, and I guess, I don't know all the details, and what I'm saying may not be correct, but they were, going at him. And, he says, I'm guessing, hey, I've never been arrested. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I work for such and such a company, or whatever. And yeah, I was there. And he said, I bumped into a guy, a tall, black, skinny, black male. And he was, I think this guy had come, I think he'd come there earlier, like to scope the place out, I think. I may be wrong about this. This happened like 1975 or something, so it's, 2020 now? But the guy said, they were like, yeah, sure, tell us why you really did it, And he said, he got into a Cadillac. It'll be easy to find. It had a brand new Mako paint job on the thing. which I think you could get for like $35 or something, you know, back then. Had his car painted, and I think he had it painted pink. Right? The guy said, it'll be easy to find. It was painted pink. Now, I'm not sure with all this, you know, but anyway, so then the police are like, they're doing some checking, and when so they arrest him and, you know, make a case. Anyway, he ended up getting 4 lifetime life in prison 4 times, not concurrent. What does it say? I always get mixed up. Consecutive terms, one after another, you know. But I'm not sure that they charged him for all of the things that he actually did, that they prosecuted. I'm not sure they did that. But so what I wondered about was, how did he get elected, or how did he get hired? Because at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, it varied from hospital to hospital exactly how it worked, but personnel would give us a list of all the interviews, all the applications that they had received, or the ones they were going to interview or something like that, or had maybe interviewed. And we got their information, you know, name, address, date of birth, social security number, all that. Once a week we would drive it. One of our officers would drive downtown Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, go in and give it to them. Hospital actually paid for that. And then in a day or two, they would call us, or maybe it was a regular, maybe you just come back the next day and they had, you know, run it or whatever. And then we would get them back. Sometimes I would flip through them before I took it to the person, Home Human Resources. I'd flip through, and it was always, you know, some employee had a traffic ticket for speeding, or I mean one of these applicants, you know, or it would be they had a neighbor complained about a barking dog or something like that, you know, their dog barking or something. I never remember anything, you know. And then we would take it to Human Resources, and the Human Resources would look at it and, along with the other stuff, decide who they were hiring. So this guy had served a 10-year sentence for multiple armed robberies and had got out. So how did he get how did he get hired? And I can't remember who. If I asked Human Resources director. Well, if you remember my story, I have a long, so I'm not sure. Maybe he told me, which I'm not sure how I knew, but the story was that this guy got out of prison and that there was some organization that was trying to get these kind of people, you know, a job and make, you know, get them back so they didn't end up back in jail. And that the story I heard was that one of the wives of one of the hospital administrators volunteered her time, maybe for more than one cause, and she was with this group that was working to try to get these people who had been in prison, but who, you know, they were trying to give us a helping hand to. And she brought this guy to the attention of her husband, at a hospital administrator, and it was the word I got, which sounds like it might be realistic, was, okay, we won't run a background check, or they want to keep security out of the loop. So now I can't see them doing it on their own, because we had the relationship with the, you know, security had the relationship with the police department. So, but anyway, this guy his background was not checked because of his wife because of the wife of a hospital administrator, and the hospital administrator saying, hey, you know, I guess going to maybe the human resources, hey, my wife belongs to the blah, blah, blah. They're doing good work and everything. And there's this guy who, you know, and could we hire him, but not let security know, you know, that, and so that's what happened. So security, we never saw, you know, we never saw that this guy was a armed robber and had been in prison for 10 years. And a few years ago, I did a search for the name Vincent X. Lee, and I saw where he had filed a couple suits in prison, and I forget what one of them was for, that he claimed that he was a Muslim, and that you know, now that he'd been converted or something, you know, now he was a Muslim, and that he was suing because he wasn't getting the proper food for his religion. And I read that court case, and the judge threw it out. And then there was another court case, and I can't remember what that was about. But now here, this is when he was arrested in this situation. But I saw a suit here someplace. I think this might be it. Vincent X. Lee previously had been tried and convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. Blah, 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 blah. And I think this is, let's see. This case arose out of the robbery and shooting and death of a 7-Eleven store employee and a store customer in Independence, Missouri on June 15th of 1975. And I think I read this, and so it looks like he's sitting in prison, if he's not deceased, filing a bunch of lawsuits, or, you know, a bunch of cases. And his thing here was that some woman was not allowed to serve on the jury because she'd had 2 previous arrests for shoplifting, and she was excluded. And I think filing his thing was that there wasn't proper representation of women on the jury. I don't think it was black women. I think it was just women, that there was only one or none or something on the jury, and he was brought a suit which I think which was rejected. So, okie doke. It's 3:10 a.m. in the morning. Oh, okay, if you've been watching my videos, my ex-wife, I share an apartment here with my ex-wife and my grown son. And I think 4 days ago or something like that. Anyway, I might be off, because I'm retired. I'm going to be 80 in a couple of months, and I'm retired, and I sleep a couple hours, wake up, do something on the computer, sleep 3 hours, and wake up, and I never know what time it is, never know what day it is. But anyway, she had really bad pain about 4 or 5 days ago. And we had to call an ambulance, and she went by ambulance to the hospital. And I won't go into detail, but she thought it was her liver, because there was confusion. She'd talked on the phone to her doctor, and she wasn't complaining about a liver, or she was talking to the doctor, and her doctor is, I think, a very disorganized person who may have a lot of patients, and my ex-wife has had nothing but problems, just getting a prescription filled. So anyway, she was talking, and finally this doctor was talking, you know, called and was talking with her, and talked for like 20 minutes or so. And my ex-wife was talking to the doctor, and everything was, you know, and then the doctor said, I've got to take care of something. Can I call you back in a few minutes? And so then the doctor called back and talked for 15 or 20 minutes. I think there was another thing where the doctor said, I have to, you know, and it came back. And then the doctor is saying, well, you do have, you know, cirrhosis of the liver, stage 2. And scarring on your, you know, whatever, and boom. So the ex-wife got off, and then the ex-wife was telling me, and I said, that doesn't make sense. Lab work would have, you know, it wouldn't have gone, you know. I said, there's got to be a mistake. She said, no, the doctor told me. And anyway, there was some more of my, that doesn't make, you know, not having any problems and then going to stage, her finding out you're, you know. So anyway, after that, like the next, and the ex-wife spent time watching all the YouTube videos on what you can do if you have liver, you know, or pancreas, or liver. All the things, you know, eating, diet, drinking, you know, what not to do, what to do, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, that night, my ex-wife had major pain, so bad that, you know, ambulance had to be called, and she was transported, and she went to the hospital, and of course then she told, well, you know, I have liver disease, stage 2, scarring, all that kind of. Anyway, they did, you know, blood work there at the hospital. Your blood work's fine. We see no indication of, you know, any liver, you know, problems. And they did a MRI, I think it was. There's nothing, you know, it's fine. And so then finally, after hours, because, you know, she came home. And then the next day, so anyway, I was then telling the ex-wife, I said, I know what happened, you know, I'm sure this is what happened. You know, the doctor was talking to you for 20 or more minutes, and everything was okay. You know, I mean, you know, conversation about medications and this and that, and, you know, the diabetes and this and that, all the things were, you know, no mention or anything of liver disease or anything. And then I said, the doctor said, I have to call you back, and 20 or 30 minutes later, called back. And I think even then, maybe, there was, because I think the doctor called back about 3 times. So I'm not sure if it was, let's say it's a second, okay. So then the doctor is talking to my ex-wife, Darlene, and the doctor says, well, you do have, you know, liver disease, you know, stage 2 with scarring, and okay, this is before the first time she talked. I think I got confused right here. Anyway, gives her that information. Then Darlene went to the hospital, and that's where she told the hospital, you know, hey, I have, no, okay, so I got a little hit of my, so at the hospital, the ER then, for that first visit, they said there's nothing, and the doctor couldn't see if, did the doctor do, that scarring doesn't show up with an MRI or whatever. The doctor couldn't see that if maybe with an X-ray, maybe with an X-ray it wouldn't, but it would with that. And there was, of course, none of that stuff was done. And So, okay, when Darlene came, I said, here's what had to happen. You know, the doctor was talking to you, and everything was fine. And the doctor's the next stage. You had a doctor call back. The doctor's talking to you, and what I think undoubtedly happened, I was telling Darlene, I said, was when the doctor was talking to you that first time, she had the chart, your chart, in front of her. And then she had to go do something, and I'm thinking, knowing how hospitals work and how doctors' offices work and everything, I said some employee there, unit secretary or maybe a nurse, oh, okay, the doctor's done with this, or maybe the unit secretary says, is the doctor done with this? Yeah, I'm done with that. Talk to that woman, you know, and to put it back in the chart. And then somebody else's chart gets laid there for the doctor to call, or the doctor is going to see in the next room or something like that. And then the doctor comes back, and then the doctor is, oh, you know. So, you know, Darlene ended up going to the emergency room and telling them and everything, and they, no. So, anyway, a day or two later, I think like the next day, Darlene had started having bad pain again, really bad pain. You know, I'm calling the hospital, her insurance, you know, nurse for the insurance company, and actually, then my son came out and I telling him call 911, and actually then the insurance nurse is hearing Darlene moaning, you know, and she said, you need to take her to the, you know, to the emergency room. She sounds like she's in bad pain. And of course they transported her. And then of course there was no talk about, you know, liver thing. But anyway, they checked and she had gallstones. And they kept her and took the gallstones out, and she came home, a few hours, you know, it's 3 a.m. She came home about 12 hours or so ago, or maybe a little bit longer. She's home. She's doing okay. They, instead of, I don't know, they just made these little places. They do, I forget what they call that. They can do that in a lot of different places now. Places where before they had to cut you open. Now doctors have learned to can go through a small, and she seems like she's doing fine now. So. She needs to get a new doctor. Although I can understand, but she's already had trouble with that doctor, with getting her prescriptions, and with hard to get hold of the nurse, hard to get hold of the doctor, and that type of stuff. Also, Darlene uses a computer. She used the computer a lot. After we got divorced, I bought her, it was, well, sort of for the, well, it was for her too. After we were divorced, I bought a computer and monitor and all that type of stuff and gave it to him. And so she could sell stuff on eBay, and also so my kids could log into my bulletin board system. And so she knows how to use a computer, but some things I can't get her to do. And one thing I've told her, that I can log into my medical chart and see everything, all my lab work, all this type of stuff, and she needs to get set up. Maybe she will now. She needs to get upset so she could see all of her medical information, all of her, and she has more, you know, she's had cancer at least a couple of times. She had polio when she was 5, and she suffers from what they call post-polio syndrome. Most doctors don't even know what polio is. And she has, you know, asthma, bronchitis, diabetic like I am, and so forth and so on. So anyway, let's do this. Pull up CNN. So if you're watching this 10 years from now, Looks like Congress is getting close to making a deal on this $900 billion relief package, but there's still something holding it up. But it looks like it's probably going to happen. It looks like everybody's going to get a $600, unless you make too much money, but looks like everybody will get a $600 stimulus check, which that's really not enough. Well, it's enough like we're sharing an apartment here, so we can sure use every extra penny we get, but a lot of people, you know, $600, it's just before Christmas, and I'm not sure that people get it in time for Christmas. This is the 20th. Christmas is the 25th, but people desperately need it. $600 will help a little bit, but it would be really the $1,200 thing that we got before, $1,200. That would help a lot more, but even then, there's people who are behind in rent and all types of problems. But $600 will at least maybe somebody, if they can get it in time, can buy some Christmas presents for their kids, can buy some food so they can have, you know, a Christmas meal and a little extra left over or something. $600 is not a lot of money, but it'll help a little bit. But the other thing is this Oval Office meeting with President Trump and people screaming, I guess, at each other there. And people in this meeting, a couple of people, I guess at least, telling the president that he needs to declare martial law, he needs to declare insurrection or whatever, and cancel the elections that have taken place. And all this, I mean, this is crazy. This is treasonous talk. It's insanity. And so this is going on. I mean, so much is so I guess that's, did I want to show something else? Oh, let me jump over. Oh, if you can, please, last month I got $100 in commission from, what was I going to show? No, I wasn't going to show that. I'm just going to show this. But last month from Amazon, I got $100 in commission. They don't pay you unless you have to have at least $100. But I got $100 in commission for you people clicking on my links or just clicking on the, going to, you know, from my place, like using, underneath you'll see the links, but here's one, you know, there we go, jimhoward.me. You know, you're at Amazon now. If you go and purchase something, anything, if you purchase something, I get a commission. And last month was $100. And I've never got, and I've been with these people since the beginning of their, whatever they call it, thing. And this coming month, at the end of this month, I'm going to get $60. That's a lot of, well, I can actually show you here. I've done this before. Go to payment history. So here you'll be able to see that I am going to get $66.12 at the end of this month. Last month I got $110. Now before that I got $46. Now this is not every month, by the way. Oh, wait a minute. You know, Amazon does pay if it's over $10. Yeah, so they do, yeah, so you do, it's YouTube. You have to have $100 in commission. So it takes me like 3-4 months. But here you can see, I mean, there's months that go by that I don't get anything, you know, so this is a big improvement. So some of you are clicking on my links or using my links, and thank you, because that helps out a lot. So anyway, thank you very much, and please, oh, by the way, I only need, I said 10 or 20. Wait a minute, if I click on, what am I looking for? I forget. Oh, YouTube. Okay, where's YouTube? No, this is YouTube. Okay. I have 2,980 subscribers. I need less than 20 subscribers. But it usually takes about 28 days for me to get 10. So, but anyway, if about 20 people would subscribe, I would hit 3,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed, please click on the button below and subscribe. And I thank you very much.